All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to discuss the health issues that I had brought up before. First, before I get started, I would like to ask anybody that's watching this, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go to my Rumble channel by the same name, Alpha Acres. It's on Rumble. Because I don't know how long this video is going to stay up. I don't know if they're going to even allow me to put this information out. So, we're going back to the beginning of my health with this. I apologize if this seems out of order or confusing to anyone, but I have pages and pages and pages of notes pertaining to what's going on with me and the timeline of everything. I tried to break it down as simply as I could, and it's not that simple to break this down. It takes telling from the beginning of it, and there's a lot of info here that I want to try to get out. This is not going to be edited. This is going to be me going through it from the beginning. So this goes back to when I was in the Army. They came to us and they told us that we had to get the anthrax vaccine after my first deployment. Most of us fought it and said that we didn't want to get it, that we didn't think it was legal, that there was no prevalence of anthrax attacks, so that we didn't have to get it. And we were told that's fine, you're right, you don't have to get it, but if you don't get it, we're not going to allow you to deploy, and if you don't deploy, we're going to charge you with missing movement, and we're going to send you to Leavenworth. So we were forced to get this under the threat of imprisonment. You know, they can argue any way around that they want. I was flat out told if I did not get it, they were going to make me go to prison. So I received the anthrax vaccine 2 times in the United States before I deployed for my second trip. Then when we got to Iraq on my second deployment, they came to us and told us that there were no records of us having received the anthrax vaccine and that we would have to get it again. I was then given it 4 more times throughout the course of that 1.5-year deployment, totaling 6 times. Back in the States, when I got my first doses, I almost immediately got pneumonia. I think it was maybe a day or 2 later, I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. My uvula, which is the thing that hangs down in the back of your throat, I woke up in the morning and it was stretched out super long, and I could roll it in between my teeth and bite it. And even to today, if I get a cold now, my uvula elongates and I can put it between my teeth and bite on it. It's the weirdest, craziest thing ever, but it just is. So after that, I got better, and then we went to Iraq. I never had any immediate reactions to the anthrax vaccine after that, but what I did start was I started getting headaches like all the time, and they would last a week, and it would just be one side, and then those progressed into migraines, and the migraines started getting worse. And within a couple of years of that, I started getting dizzy spells. So this was right before I got out of the Army. Within a month or 2 of getting out of the Army, I started getting dizzy spells. They were random. I'd stand up from a seat, I'd go to move, and my entire body would get lightheaded and tingly, and I would sit down in order to stop myself from falling. And a lot of times during this, I would have what's called, or what I refer to it, it's a weird thing, I call it basically the flickering of the eyes. So what I have is I'll stand up and my eyes will almost shutter like a camera, you know, like it'll be like, and I won't be able to see it. Like my eyes go black and then come back to vision. And it's almost as if my eyelids are closing, only they're not. And I don't know what it is. I've tried explaining it to doctors, and I've been written off many times as I'm making these symptoms up and that they're not valid and that there's no such thing. I also get weird little floaters, I think they refer to them, just little bright spots that float around in my eyes, and you know, I'll just be sitting there and then randomly these little spots will pop up and start floating around. You know, it'll come along with dizziness. And then after that, when I got out of the Army, the headaches continued. I started having other little random things like numbness and tingling in my shoulders. My shoulder was just constantly hurting for no reason. Then if I got cut or something like that, my wounds wouldn't heal. It would take longer for me to get a scab. It would seem like I bled longer. And I would bring these things to the VA and tell them about it. And basically was getting ignored because there was no test that could prove that these things were occurring. And as time progressed, I started getting sicker longer. People, my family would get sick and everybody else would heal in a couple of days. And it would take me over a week to get over a cold. I'd always get over it. It was just odd that everybody else could heal so fast and I couldn't. The next thing I believe that started happening to me was I started getting random stabbing pains in my stomach. And it literally feels like somebody's stabbing me in my abdomen. It's excruciating. It'd bring me to my knees. And again, nobody could explain to me why these things were occurring. But all these have started adding up over the years. And finally, I went to the VA, and I'm not going to say where, but I went to a VA and I tried to give my doctor there a list of all these symptoms. The doctor flipped out on me and told me that I was making up my symptoms, trying to get a financial gain out of the system, and that he wouldn't work with me on that issue. And it seemed very odd to me that I could bring him this list of symptoms, as my wife and I had taken quite some time to sit down, and every time something would occur, we documented it. We wanted to make sure that we had it so that we could start trying to figure out what was going wrong with me. I had another doctor after that doctor who ended up quitting the VA and said she couldn't be complicit in what was going on anymore. Even at this point, I didn't even realize that what I now think was a mass cover-up of what they did to us. And I think certain doctors were involved in it, and I think they absolutely knew what was going on, and their job was to not let it get out and watch us. So now that they're telling me that I'm lying about my symptoms, and my symptoms are progressing, the headaches and migraines were just a constant thing, I started realizing that something was going on. I started realizing that it seemed to me that I didn't know everything about my health that I should know. So I started getting copies of every medical record of mine I could, tracking everything I could as far as I can to see what there was that I could find and see what was going on. And I then started taking those to attorneys and saying that I thought something was wrong with me, which led to multiple court battles, fighting the VA and other people to prove that something was wrong with me. And I slowly started getting more evidence and seeing more of the truth of it. Then when we moved to our homestead in 2019, when we came to the property where we're at now, I ended up getting another new VA doctor who at this point actually seemed to care, and he seemed to want to look into what was going on with me. So I just kind of went along with it. Was like, oh, this is a doctor who seems to want to get tests done for me, was willing to get me into neurology and, gastrointestinal, and start getting my stomach issues figured out that were going on, which all started at the same time. And then 2020 hit. When 2020 hit, February, we all got sick with COVID. We all got sick with it, and everybody in the household was affected by it. Everybody else got better fast. Me, on the other hand, I didn't. I was affected the worst by it, and it nearly killed me. Which, there's not many people that will say that getting COVID nearly killed them. I will say it. It absolutely did. It almost shut my body completely down. Again, the whole household caught it. Every single one of us got it. We all got sick. Everybody else got through it super fast, except for my youngest. He had some issues too, but not that bad. He probably went about 4 days, and he was getting out of it. Me, by the second day, I couldn't walk. I physically couldn't move my body, and I had to fight with everything in me to get out of the bed. And I knew something was wrong, and that it wasn't normal. And I literally told my wife that if I didn't fight it and I didn't force myself to get out of the bed, that I was going to die. And I, to this day, believe that to be true. That had I not forced myself to walk around, had I not forced myself through all the pain that it took to move, that my body would have shut down right then, right there, and I probably would have not made it. So after that, about, I think 2-3 weeks it took me to recover before I could really walk again and didn't hurt and wasn't using a cane everywhere I was going because of the pain. But my fatigue didn't go away. I would get winded and tired super fast, no matter what I was doing, working around on the property, walking around. We did a lot of fence repairs that year, trying to move our pastures for our horses to prep for them. And I couldn't punch a single fence post without being completely winded before I was done. And that's not normal. I mean, even with all the pain I had from the broken back, the dislocated shoulder, the damage with my spine at my skull, none of that stopped me from being able to do what I did, because I could always manage to go for a little while, get some work done, and then, set down for a while and then go back and get the task finished. However, now I reached the point where I couldn't punch 2 fence posts a day, and every time I was so winded that I could barely breathe, and I had to sit down on the spot. There was no walking back to the house. There was none of that. I would have to sit down and I would have to breathe for a couple of minutes until I could finally catch my breath and get moving again. So this led to me contacting someone in the VA that I knew and explaining to them what was going on with me. Their response to me was that they looked into my blood work and they asked me when the last time it had been discussed with me. Anybody that goes to the VA knows you get your blood work done every 6 months or once a year. And basically they're like, oh, you're good. Have a nice day. And that's it. That's basically a checkup. So this person looked at my blood and said that they believed that something was being hidden from me. They told me that I needed to go into the VA and ask for a CBC with diff and tell them I was not leaving until I had the results. I did that day. This is probably March of 2020. I went in. I told them that I wanted the CBC with diff and that I wasn't leaving. So they took me back to my doctor's office and did my blood work. And he came back probably 5 to 10 minutes later, and he told me that my blood work had to be sent off to Salt Lake City. I knew right then that I had cancer. I had told the doctor prior to this VA doctor, that I felt like I had been poisoned, and I felt like that whatever was happening with me was in my blood. And hold on one second. Heat's kicking on in the doghouse. We got to wait for it to kick off. But I had told the prior doctor that I had felt as though I had been poisoned and that I felt like I had cancer. The doctor, again, I told you, basically started telling me I was making up these symptoms and that I was doing this for some kind of financial gain. Now we go back to where we are with the blood work and them telling me that it has to be sent off to Salt Lake City. I looked at my doctor and I told him that I already knew and that I have cancer, don't I? And his response was, yes, I believe you do, and it's in your blood. They didn't know why my white blood cell count was way off or why my platelets were as high as they were. It didn't make sense to anyone. So my blood work got sent off to Salt Lake City. I believe it was a few weeks after that. My blood work came back and they told me that I had myeloproliferative neoplasms, blood cancer. They didn't know exactly which kind I had, other than that my numbers looked really bad and that I should be concerned. So I was then scheduled with an oncologist, and initially on meeting them, the belief was that I had severe acute leukemia. And 2020, we were told to prep for my death, that more than likely I was not going to make it through the year, and that we should make plans accordingly to that. So we told very few people. We didn't let a lot of people know what was going on, because I wasn't looking for sympathy or someone to feel sorry for me for what I was dealing with. I just wanted to spend time with my family as much as I could. I was scheduled for a bone marrow transplant, I was scheduled for a bone marrow biopsy and an aspiration in October of 2020, somewhere around October 13th or so. At this point, again, we had made all these preparations for my death, and I went in for the bone marrow biopsy and aspiration, which is an interesting one for any of you that have had cancer or have cancer. If you've ever had that done and you went into it awake, it's a very interesting experience to have someone drill a hole in your hip bone while you're awake and take a chunk of your bone out while you're having a conversation with them. It was an uncomfortable experience. I don't want to say it hurt, but you most definitely feel it. It's more of a really bad pressure, and it feels like someone's like pushing, pulling, and squeezing on your hip until the aspiration. The aspiration, they put a tube in your hip, and basically my understanding is that they pull bone marrow out into a syringe to have that tested. It felt like somebody stuck a straw in my hip and was trying to suck on like a juice box with no juice in it, and they were just sucking on my hip. That hurt. It was quite painful, and I just laughed through it and told the doctor to hurry up and get it finished. I'll probably go to sleep the next time I have it done, because I will have to have it done again. The results of that were that I did not have the acute leukemia they thought I had. I had essential thrombocytosis, which is a different type of blood cancer. And that with that, I had a CalR positive genetic mutation, meaning that someone had added or removed something from my genetic structure. I was genetically mutated. Again, I absolutely believe it was the anthrax vaccine. It was a good thing, because it meant I wasn't going to die as soon. You can live longer with this. Most people tend to have it in their 60s. I'm significantly younger than 60, and it's basically unheard of for anyone my age to have had this or be as advanced as I was. At that point, we had to change the plans. We had to now get me off to a specialist who could handle that. I met again with my oncologist, and we talked about where I was at, what mutation I had gone through. We discussed the different mutations that could occur from there, to include a JAK2 mutation. And basically, I was told the next mutation is going to kill you. You're going to get worse, and it's going to be hard to stop it. I asked, because at the time, this is now November of 2020, the shot was coming out and it was in full discussion, and I had discussions with my doctor at the time about, should I get it based on the fact that I already had a genetic mutation? Would it be safe for me? Every single doctor I talked to in November of 2020 told me, do not go near it, do not touch it. It's not good. There's no way it could be effective. There's no way they could have studied it well enough to tell us what could happen, and it could cause the mutation, as no one knew anything about mRNA technology to that level. I was strongly, highly advised to not get it. Then, 2 months later, in January of 21, when the vaccine did its full rollout, I have 2 family members who both received the Moderna vaccine. One of them was dead 7 days after their second dose, along with the other person who lived in the house with them, who mysteriously, several months later, had a hole appear in their aorta. The vaccine killed an entire household for me, nearby me. And it sucks. At the same time as them family members got it, I was with one of them in a vehicle and drove across the state of Michigan for a family event that occurred, an emergency that involved a hospital on the other side of the state. I rode with this family member across the state, and they kept coughing, like over and over and over again. And finally I asked them, "Are you okay?" And they said they were fine, but they hadn't stopped coughing since they received it that morning. And I said, "Oh, your shingles shot." I was like, I don't understand how that would make you cough like that. And their response to me was, no, the other one. And I was like, what other one? And they responded to me, the COVID one. They told me that I needed to get it. I then asked them, did they not tell you that you're not supposed to be around somebody because they believe that it sheds and you could spread it to other people through coughing? They were told no. They told me that I could be around everyone immediately, that there's no way that could happen. Within a week of that, I started getting little red spots that appeared all across my body. I, due to my cancer, was already having my blood work done every 2 weeks. Like I was literally in the cancer center every 2 weeks getting my blood drawn, tracking my platelet count, because my platelets were going up and no one could explain why, other than now we know the cancer was doing it, because the essential thrombocytosis creates mass platelet production in your body. So due to having my blood tracked, we were able to watch that not only at that time, the spots started appearing all over my body, and I still have them to today. My legs are covered in little red spots. My feet are completely covered. My thighs, my arms, I get them all over my hands. I had those spots tested, and I was told that my body was having an allergic reaction to something in it. The dermatologist that I saw later on told me, "Oh, that's eczema. Don't worry about it. Here's a cream. Put this on there." The cream made it worse. It made the spots spread. They got bigger. They got brighter. So that it's not eczema, and the creams that they give you for eczema didn't work. At the same time as the spots, I started experiencing severe chest pains. Now, I knew that I was already having lung issues, and I didn't know if it had something to do with that, but I could absolutely tell that the pains were coming from my heart. Now, my family's known for having incredibly strong hearts. A lot of us are endurance runners. I ran long distance my entire life. From junior high all the way through high school, I ran the mile, I ran the 3 mile, I wrestled for 10 years, I boxed on and off for 2 years. I've always been involved in some form of martial arts training. I've fought on the Army combatives team. I ran in a platoon in the Army that ran miles. Every time we did our PT, we were running. We knew it. We were runners. That's what we did. We always wanted to be physically fit and have strong hearts. In the Army, it ain't the fastest time, but in general, without pushing myself, I ran a 13-minute 2 mile. All day long, no problem whatsoever. I could run a 13-minute 2 without ever without ever exerting myself. I probably could have got that down to under that if I actually, ran hard and pushed myself. But I've always had an insanely strong heart and an insanely strong set of lungs. Before all this recent stuff happened, I was told by even the VA when they tested my heart and lungs that it's incredibly strong. There's no issues with it. Then now you go to these pains, and I knew it was my heart. So I had to get my heart tested because it didn't stop. I mean, we're 3 years later, and I still have heart pain. I had to go have that heart pain tested. I was given a CT angiogram. So basically it's a full mapping of your chest and everything in there to determine how the flow is going through everything, or that is my understanding of it. And in that test, we found that I have concentric hardening of the inside of my heart, and that my heart overpressurizes and regurgitates backwards. There's no explanation for why my heart did this. No one can tell me how I ended up with hardening of the inside of my heart to where I couldn't run a mile if I tried to right now. I would be in so much pain, and every moment I would be concerned that my heart is going to give out on me. So going to the heart doctor after finding out these results, any doctor, to include the heart doctor, did from that point on was suggest that I take the shot over and over again, telling me how it's the best thing for me and I should do it. This led to me reading all the data I could on that. And they knew exactly what was going to happen when they gave this shot to people. They knew that it was going to shed, and they knew it would affect people. So I know that that's what caused this to me. The next thing that started occurring after the heart is my platelets immediately went into overdrive. My cancer, I don't know if they would call it stage 4, but it basically decided that it was going to turn on full force and try to kill me. Anybody who ever has their platelets tracked, you know that the limit is 400,000 platelets. Once you reach past 400,000 platelets, they start getting concerned. They start wondering, why is your body producing all these platelets? Because platelets are what cause you to clot. They collect together and will cause clots. And mine were already over 400,000 when this all started in 2020. By 21, in January, when this all started occurring to me, my platelets were somewhere around 700,000. We're now talking almost double what your body should have in it. And it wasn't stopping. So I was set to go to a specialist at U of M in Ann Arbor who specialized in my cancer specifically. I got to that doctor in August of 2021. So from January of 2021 to August of 2021, I went from somewhere around 700,000 platelets to 1,655,000 platelets in my blood. Basically, I was pumping pure sludge through my body, and nobody that did my blood could understand why I hadn't stroked out and clotted up and died yet. And again, I was told, at this rate, there's no way you're going to make it through the year of 2021. And again, for the second year in a row, we planned for my death. We fully prepped for me to die. And again, we tried to tell as few people as possible, just so that people didn't have to think about it. I don't ever want what I deal with to be a burden on other people. I don't want my family members to be like thinking about that all the time. So we didn't tell anybody. Upon getting with that specialist in August and my blood getting there, I started a heavy dose of chemo. I was on initially 3 pills of my chemo twice a day, every single day. And I ran that basically into December before we ever saw a drop in my platelets, before the chemo finally kicked in. Then slowly the chemo corrected the numbers and we were able to bring them back down. And I have been running somewhere around 400,000. It took probably another 6 months to get them down, but in general, I run around 350 to 400,000 now. I'm still hot on the higher side, but within safe range. The next step was trying to figure out why I didn't clot, why I didn't stroke out and die due to the mass number of platelets in my blood. Testing showed that the reason I didn't clot is I have another disease called von Willebrand's disease. And basically what it does is it tells your body to not clot. It tells your blood, your platelets to not stick together. So my body, using von Willebrand's disease, managed to stop me from dying and fight the cancer itself as long as it could until the chemo started. And let's see, the chemo, we ended up cutting it down. I take 3 pills once a day now. So because I was on a super high dose and it made me really, really sick. They told me to just stop it outright. Stop taking your chemo. I did that for like 3-4 weeks and then I never heard from anybody. So I just started my own regimen and I started watching my blood because I was constantly in the cancer center getting it checked. So I started watching it myself and I basically worked out my own dose to the 3 pills a day. And to this day, I still take 3 pills every single morning except for Sunday. I won't take that poison on a Sunday. I just won't. During this period, I also had multiple emergency room visits, believed heart attacks, severe pains in my chest, complete numbing and shutdown of my left arm, tingling. The headaches got worse, migraines, everything increased during this period until the chemo kicked in and started lowering anything. The problem that I've now run into is it seems basically that the VA stopped caring. And I think it's because of the fact that I started calling them out on these things once I figured out what had happened to me. And I even went in there after being ignored over and over and over again. It led to me going into the VA and basically telling them, I'm coming in here to tell you these are my issues and I need them on record. And they would tell me, well, there's no reason for you to come into this office. You can call. And I told them, no, I'm here so that this is recorded on camera because there's a camera in this room. I'm telling you something's wrong with me and I need help. I have been begging for a pulmonary function test for 3 years now. They will not give it to me. They've sent me to a doctor who refused to treat me because I wouldn't do a rapid test. And I'm not going to get into it on this video. Anyone who researches like I do knows the truth about this, knows the truth about the prevalency and how accurate the test is. We know the truth about the trials. And it's at this point, it seems like the doctors are either scared to say something or they're complicit in it. And basically everything pertaining to this. Another thing that came out during this, I kept complaining about the stomach pains, the stabbing pains to the stomach. I got a MRI, I believe it was, scheduled for my abdomen region. And when they did, they double booked me for the slot. And I got in there. And the guy that did it told me he didn't think that the tests that I was getting were the proper ones for what I said. And he threw in a different test for me. And in the test that he threw in for me, we were able to find that I have a mass of blood cells on my liver that don't function right. There's a name for it. I don't have that in front of me. But in the end, they tried to refuse me all these tests, and I managed to get them through other people and asking other doctors to help me. And I'm finding all these things that are wrong with me that it seems like they may have known about and have been covering up. During one of my court cases, I was told that I have medical records that I'm not allowed to see. My attorney was not allowed to see them. I won the court case, and still to this day have not been allowed to see those medical records. So this all leads me to say, basically in the end, having done the research that I've done, knowing what's wrong with me, knowing about my genetic mutation, knowing that I was mutated again when the new one rolled out, and knowing that certain doctors refuse to discuss it, and that certain doctors seem to know about what is going on but refuse to treat it, it can only lead me to believe one thing, and that is that this is an experiment that they started on us soldiers 20 years ago so that they could long-term study us and watch us through the VA systems and watch as we died and caught all these random rare illnesses. And after 20 years, I think they realized that it was their time to do it to everyone. So what they did to us, I believe, is exactly what this last rollout was. I think that I was a science experiment, that I was fully studied and tracked for years. And I think that the same doctors knew exactly what was going to occur with this new one. And I think they are all complicit in what is occurring. So it's taken a lot of time to get all the stuff that I have together in order to make this video, in order to have these facts and know that what I'm saying is truth. It's years of reading, years of research, and years of my time trying to find out what was wrong with me. I'm still fighting them. I'm still fighting to be treated. I'm still being denied treatments. I'm still being talked to like I'm crazy when I mention these things to people. So I just want everybody to be aware of this and know that they know what they're doing, because they did it to us a long time ago. So I hope this video didn't overwhelm anyone or turn you off to discussing what's going on. I hope this will allow people to start standing up for yourselves and start standing up to these doctors who are doing this to us. Because if we don't, and we don't get this information out to people, they're not going to stop. They are going to continue, and they are going to watch all of us start getting sick from these random things and never admit to what they did to us. So I hope this video can shine some light for somebody, and maybe another veteran who is dealing with these random illnesses. Maybe this will allow you or give you the wants to do your own research and start looking into your own records and seeing what they did to you. Because this isn't just me. This is potentially thousands, tens of thousands of us that they did this to. And they knew it, and they know it now. So thank you. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you get something out of it.